What's up, my friends? It is Danny Gallows, of course, and welcome back to my next Navy video. I forget what part it is now because it's been so long since I've been back to do my Navy videos. You can tell that the red dot is finally gone now. So yeah, like I said, I'm back with my next Navy story today, which of course is going to be basically the first half of my life in the fleet, and then like my first trip to Hawaii as well. And you'll probably have to forgive all of the edits here. There's probably going to be a lot of edits in this video because I'm going to be stopping myself as I kind of like remember, because there's a lot to remember about the first part of my Navy experience. But what I remember vividly, though, just about being in the Navy is really my time on shore, oddly enough, because we didn't go out to sea right away. So I had plenty of time to kind of like acclimate myself to San Diego, and that's really what I did. The first part of my life out in the fleet was acclimating myself to San Diego. Like I said, there was a van that would pick us up and take us into the city. So I would go out into Horton Plaza, which was the mall in San Diego, and I would just walk around and experience things. I remember I got swindled into a deal by this chick who was selling magazines, and she was like, she was trying to flirt with me and stuff, and I was young and naive, and I ended up buying a bunch of magazines, and it was just like, it was my first time out, and I was a sucker. I was young. I was 19 years old, and yeah, I just remember going to Horton Plaza and like buying anime, because I was still heavily into anime at that time as well. So I'd go to Horton Plaza and I'd buy anime, and I'd come back and I'd watch it, by myself. And slowly I started to gain friends. Like I said, my friend Kyle Haas, I got my first apartment with him. So we just continued our life on our apartment and hanging out together on the ship, and it was a trip, experiencing things like eating on the ship if we had duty or something like that, going down and eating. Navy food is strange. It's not horrible, it's not bad, but it's different. It's mass market easy food. It's like the hamburgers don't taste quite right, and the hot dogs don't taste quite right, and but everything is generally okay for the most part, but just don't eat too much of it. And then what happened was I started developing more friends at that point. I remember being sent down cranking. They call it cranking. They'll send you to go work down in the mess halls, and you'll have to like wash dishes and like work in the kitchen as part of, like everybody does it. Everybody has to go down and do their shift in the kitchen, like washing dishes or something. And that's where I started really making a lot of friends. Like I remember I met my friend, one of my best friends ever, Matt Lambert, down in the dish pit. He ended up being the bassist for my bands going forward in the Navy. I remember that me and him just built like a real camaraderie. I remember, like being assigned captain of the dish pit or something like that by one of the supervisors that were down there, and I would me and him were like responsible for everything. We had this like kind of fake responsibility or whatever. And I just remember hanging out with Matt and just like sharing stories and just getting to know each other. And then I met my friend Jen Wise down there, Shelly, my friend Chris Duncan, and it was really when I met Matt that everything really changed for me, because Matt kind of, Kyle took me under his wing and showed me what it was like to have my own apartment and stuff, but Matt was the guy who showed me really what life in San Diego was like. Matt took me out. I remember very vividly, driving down the street in his truck. He had a red Chevy S10 with rims on it that was a little bit lowered, and we loved taking it around just like blasting hardcore music. We were both into hardcore music at the time, stuff like The Bled and stuff like that. And so we were listening to a lot of hardcore and just blasting hardcore. And I remember going to his friend Vic's house and getting really very, very drunk for the first time off of this stuff called Sparks. I don't know if any of you guys remember that. It was like energy drink alcohol. And I just remember getting drunk and like watching Gorillaz videos and talking about shows and just being introduced to different musicians. I remember, like his friend Vic, he wanted to play cover songs and a cover band. And I remember like not being about that. I remember playing guitar for him over at his apartment because we were gonna put together like this punk band or something, and then it eventually kind of just like evolved into more meetings, because soon after that he introduced me to his other friend Chris Duncan, who actually worked in my department in a different division. He worked in V2, which was the arresting gears, the green shirts, and he was an amazing drummer. And so when we met him, that's when things really started to take off. We started to form a band and stuff. And you know, it may sound strange to you guys that, yeah, we formed a band and yeah, we were in the Navy. It's like, you know, regular stuff happens all the time in the Navy. You know, your life doesn't just stop. I mean, you have certain restrictions and stuff like that, right? But your life doesn't just stop because you join the Navy. You know, it just, you know, you still do regular activities like have a band. You know, you have band, you know, you still can hang out with your friends and go to the mall and stuff, you know, all the stuff that you normally do. And so we started a band. And so I remember just, you know, just the beginning days. I mean, I still remember, like, you know, driving back from Guitar Center with like an 8-track, you know, ready to record, because we would play in the band's community center. Like there was a community center there, and we would, you know, we would hang out, we would have our parties, we'd hang out, whatever, and then the rest of our spare time, we would go to this community center where they had this rec room where they had this really crappy drum set up, but it was enough for, you know, my drummer Chris Slopes was his nickname. Slopes could play on anything. Slopes was like a drum machine with a soul. You know what I'm saying? He was a perfect timekeeper, amazing drummer, and so we just began this hardcore project. I remember being introduced to my other good friend. You know, this all happened at once. It was all the same time because Matt had this apartment out on that was across from Walmart on the 94 freeway, across from the 94 freeway, and we would just have the best parties over there. Like, I mean, he would just invite all kinds of people over, and we would listen to music, and then of course we would drink. And the first time I ever blacked out from alcohol was at his apartment. I don't know if you guys have ever blacked out before, but it's scary. It's a scary experience. I mean, I remember standing there on the porch after doing, like, I must have done something like 15 shots or something like that, and I just remember going blind. My eyes just started going blind. Everything just went black, and I fell down the stairs and everything. And I remember, like, you know, puking up chicken fries and waking up in another apartment. Apparently, like, I still don't remember it to this day. Apparently somebody like picked me up and took me to another apartment, and I woke up the next morning in another apartment, and I had no idea how I got there. Like I said, it was the first and only time I've ever blacked out from alcohol, and it was scary. But he just had the best parties. Like, he just, you know, that was our life. In the Navy, you live life always on the edge because you're always in danger of being sent out to sea, going on deployment. You're always in danger of having that life ripped away from you. So, to combat that, to kind of equalize that, right, you just live on the edge and you party it up, and you just have the best time of your life. And we had the best friends, and I remember Matt and Chris were really into Warcraft too, so sometimes we would just hang out at the house and we would watch movies and they would play Warcraft, and we would work on songs. We would write songs together, play guitar together and everything, and just work on songs and then go to the rec room. And I remember, like, even Kyle, you know, even though I wasn't living with him anymore, he was still around and stuff from time to time. He had been transferred to the Nimitz, I believe, at that point, so we weren't seeing each other as much anymore. And even he took us around because we were looking for a place to play. I remember we were looking for like a storage unit with a power supply and an outlet or something like that. Because we were going to play in the storage area. We were actually going to, like, play in the storage area. And now looking back on it, that was kind of dumb, you know, because who would ever allow that kind of activity, a storage unit? I really don't think they would allow that. But yeah, that was our life at that apartment for a long time, just hanging out with all kinds of people and then living the Navy life. And then I'm not sure if we moved into a house. It was probably after the first Hawaii trip, so I'll save that story for after the first Hawaii trip. But sometime during our life there, the first section of our life there in San Diego, we took our first cruise, and that just happened to be our cruise out to Hawaii. And of course, you know, all of us, me especially, were very, very excited because think about this, guys, you know, this is my first trip, right, out to sea on an aircraft carrier. And not only am I going to get to experience what the Navy life is on an aircraft carrier, but we're ending up in Hawaii, where we're going to get to spend like 3 days just vacationing and like living it up for free. This is all a free trip, you know, and then come back home. Of course, we're working and stuff, but it's technically a free trip. And so I just remember being out at sea for the first time is just, if you guys have never experienced what it's like to be like on a cruise ship, because even a cruise ship, you know, you don't have to be on an aircraft carrier to experience that kind of feeling and that emotion, although it does add to it quite a bit. But if you've been on something like a cruise ship and you've just stood at the front of the ship, you know, like you know, Titanic, you know, or stood at the back of the ship, or just something up high on the ocean and looked out over the ocean while the ship is moving, it's a very magical, majestic experience. And now combine that, right, with flight ops. Combine that with planes landing on the flight deck and you having to chalk in, because that was my job. I was a blue shirt. I started out as a blue shirt. My job was, when the planes came in, the yellow shirts would taxi the planes in. They tell them where to go. Then my job was to run in with the chalks and with the chains and chalk up the wheels, and then chain the helicopters and the big propeller aircrafts down to the flight deck. And it was fun too, because Kyle was my trainer. You know, I had the big T on my helmet. I felt ridiculous, you know, because I was in training. But you have to have someone run with you while you're in training. And I remember, you know, that was one of my first times chalking and chaining, was chaining down a helicopter that had landed on the deck. And it was just so great, because you think that it's going to be this really nerve-wracking experience, but it's not. It was kind of just like, you know, because we had headgear on that would protect us from the sound and stuff like that. So it was kind of just like running up to the side of a really loud car and just chaining down the wheel of a car to the deck while this really, really loud motor ran above you. But, you know, we would have to duck and hunch down and run in and out. And it was just fun. But let me tell you guys, it was really, really scary when the propeller aircraft came through. Those propeller aircraft, man, those things taxiing on the flight deck, and of course they have their wings folded up behind them and everything, but their propellers are, you know, buzzing at high, you know, the highest speed they can on the flight deck, and they're moving around the flight deck. And mind you, I'm a chalker and chainer. So I'm walking behind the propeller while it's blowing in my face. And imagine standing like literally inches from a propeller that reaches to the top of my ceiling to the bottom of my floor, going as fast as it can at the highest RPM that it can on the flight deck, just making this sound, you know, this whang sound like that, and you have to stand right behind it and chalk the wheel and chain the wheel down while the rotors are going just like a couple of feet from your face. I mean, it's a very, very nerve-wracking experience. This is why, you know, the Navy has such strict policies about like substance abuse and stuff like that. You cannot be off your game on the flight deck. If you touch the rotors, you are blended, and that's it. And you know what, in wartime, when you're out to sea, if we were in the Middle East or something like that, they mop you up and they keep going. That's it. And so it's like you cannot be off your game. You have to keep your head on a swivel, as they say, on the flight deck. You have to be 100% committed to every single inch that you step on the flight deck. And that's why it's considered, I believe still to this day, it's considered America's second most dangerous job, is because it is one of the scariest things that you can ever experience in your life. And I mean, that's what it was, you know. Thankfully on Hawaii we didn't have too many flight ops going on, but that's how I normally was out to sea. But let me tell you guys, you know, what I got to experience for the first time was standing on the bow of that aircraft carrier while the ship was going at a fair rate of speed. And when you have nothing out ahead of you but ocean, and you look to the left, ocean, you look to the right, ocean, you look ahead of you, ocean, and it's just ocean and sky. You know, I think that's where I really fell in love with the ocean. I mean, I grew up by the sea all my life, but I really fell in love with the ocean when I was in the Navy. You know, like going out there, it's like being on another planet. Like imagine a planet where there's no land. There's only the aircraft carrier and you, and then the only thing else is ocean and sky. And it's like just being in this very strange, almost surreal environment, and standing on the bow, the very bow of an, you know, because we had to go out there to do like maintenance and stuff like that sometimes. So standing on the very bow of an aircraft carrier and just kind of like, you know, just freebirding it for a minute, you know, and just kind of like letting yourself stand there almost like you're the commander of the entire universe. Very surreal, powerful feeling being there. It was such an amazing experience. But soon Hawaii appeared out of the distance, and they do it slow at first. You know, they slowly go along the coastline of Hawaii before they pull in. We'll be there a day ahead of time before they pull in, so we can see Hawaii off the coast. And let me tell you something. Pulling into Pearl Harbor it was a big honor because we had to dress up. A lot of us had to dress up in our uniforms and do the salute, of course, to all the sunken ships in Pearl Harbor. Of course, all the lives lost, and so we had to do the salute in our uniforms until the ship passed, and then the ship finally docked, and we were off to Hawaii. And it was just the best thing. I remember being on the flight deck, and my buddy Phil Nelson, my buddy Phil, you know, who I had just recently become friends with. Again, it was in my division. We were just working together, became friends. One of the funniest, entertaining guys I've ever met. He took to me really fast. I took to him really fast, and we just became, you know, instant friends. It was one of those instant friendships, you know. And I remember he was filming me on the flight deck. You know, we had our digital cameras, and we were filming each other. And oh yeah, this is Hawaii, and we're about to go off here and off there. And if you guys have never been to Hawaii, man, it's a trip to see when you're in the harbor and you're just looking up at these mountains just rising up out of the ocean. And Hawaii has a very, very unique landscape, obviously. And it was great, and I remember my buddy Jeff was there as well, Jeff Connor, and me and Jeff and Phil, and Hutch was there too. We all went to a rent-a-car place. That was the first thing we did. We all got a convertible, of course, and then we just went driving around, and Hutch had his video. Everybody had their video cameras and digital cameras out, and we were all filming. I remember stopping at like a food place where they had traditional Hawaiian food, like a traditional Hawaiian like cabbage, like spiced cabbage and stuff like that, and we were eating that and trying all kinds of stuff. And then we went out to the coast. We went to the first beach we could find. We didn't know, we didn't have a map or a GPS or anything, so we just drove out to like the first beach that we could find, and I think it was like right on Waikiki Beach, I believe that was the name of it, which is like the main beach. We just saw like the main strip and the drag and everything, and we were like, oh, there it is, there's the beach. And we pulled up, we got out, and I just remember, you know, swimming in tropical water is so awesome because it's like room temperature. You know, it's not cold at all. It's just like this you know, very tepid water. And we were swimming out, and I remember we went out too far, and we started getting yelled at from people who were on the coastline. They were like, hey, like, you know, hey, like, come back, like you're too far out. And we were like, why? What do you mean? And all of a sudden, we look below us, and inches below our feet, our dog paddling feet and legs, you know, dangling in the water, right below us is a huge bed of coral with all of this tropical fish, and people were like, come back, like you're too far out, you know, you can't touch the coral, like you gotta come back out, you have to stay, because we had to stay in this one area. If you were to swim at that beach, you couldn't go out past a certain point, you had to stay in this one area and stay away from the coral reef. And it was so cool because I remember, you know, doing like a Superman. You know, we were doing like Superman, trying to get ourselves back across because the coral was like right beneath us, and we were trying to, you know, like not touch it, you know, because obviously you touch coral and it will begin to die. And then we just had a fun time. I remember like being in the car. I remember Jeff and Phil doing like karate moves and like cartwheels and flips and stuff like that in the park while there was a mountain in the background. I can't remember. I think it might be Diamond Head is the name of it. In the background and everything, and that was our first day. And then I remember the second day, I didn't have anybody to hang out with because everybody was on duty. So I said, well, you know, obviously I'm not going to hang around the ship, you know, I'm in Hawaii, I'll just do what I've been doing in San Diego this whole time, I'll go out myself. And I did, and the first place I saw while I was out walking the streets was a moped place, you know, a scooter place, an electric scooter. And I just like, you know, like a light bulb went off, and I was like, yes, like this is what I want to do. So I went in there, you know, showed the guy my license, signed up, got my moped, and I proceeded to spend the entire day, I had my headphones in, and I was listening to Third Eye Blind, one of my favorite bands of all times. You know, just listening to Third Eye Blind on shuffle. You know, all these songs going through my head and on repeat. Also, obviously, And I spent the entire day just weaving in and out of the traffic of Hawaii, going up mountain roads, down mountain roads, in the city, out of the city, over bridges. Oh, and I went everywhere. I traveled so far that eventually I had to actually get gas for the scooter. Like, I was out all day and I was running out of gas, and I actually had to fill the scooter back up because I was completely out of gas, and I was just riding all over the place. And looking back on it now, it's kind of strange because I'd never been in Hawaii before. Like, it was a completely foreign territory to me, but I was sitting there, like, I was literally sitting there, with my headphones in, no helmet on, going like 40 miles an hour down highways, not highways, but like main streets and roads that I had never seen before, just weaving in and out of traffic, just doing my thing because I was fearless. I was what was I, 19 years old, like 19 going on 20, somewhere around there. I was fearless. There's a whole attitude that comes with being in the Navy so young. You got to remember that at the age of 19, 20 years old, I was in charge, being in charge of multi-million-dollar aircraft. 19 years old. 19 and 20 years old, like, that's our responsibility. We are part of that operation. And so when you come on to land, you just have this natural kind of like energy about you that's like, nothing's gonna happen to me. Like everybody there in your group of friends, anybody that you know, and you yourself included, is the undisputed man. And that's how it is, and you carry yourself like that everywhere you go. And looking back on it, of course it was foolish and everything like that, and of course obviously I don't act like that now, but looking back on it, that's just how it was. That's just how it was. And that was basically, that's kind of all I can remember of Hawaii. I don't remember staying in a hotel. I don't believe we stayed in a hotel. It was later. I've been to Hawaii 3 times. I believe it was later that we started staying in hotels, because I think if I remember correctly, we were only there for 2 days. I only had 2 days out, and then we were right back to San Diego again, back on the ocean. And that was my first experience in Hawaii. And then, of course, after that, I came back home. We came back to San Diego, and sometime after that was when we got our new house, me and Matt, because me and Matt had become very good friends, Matt and Slopes, and everybody. But Matt was really my new best friend in the world at that point. And when we got back was when we started to make the decision to move into an actual house. And that was a very, very touching part of my life, which I will definitely save for the next video. So my next Navy experience video will be my life, continuing my life in the Navy, and then my experience moving into my very first house, and what my life was like in that house, what happened, and then also I'm gonna be starting around that time, after we moved into the house, was when we actually started to go out on cruise. So all of my cruise videos are going to be coming up next week, also from all of the different countries that I've gone to. So you guys can look forward to that. My next video will be a vlog. I'll be going out tomorrow with you guys, doing some stuff tomorrow, but starting next week on Monday, I'll be discussing, like I said, the rest of my life in the Navy, moving into my house, the cruise, and then starting on something that I've wanted to do for a long time, which is discussing all of the countries that I've visited. So thank you guys for joining me, of course, and I will see you all for the next video tomorrow. Take care. Later.